Back at it again with another episode. My name is Chauncey Upshur, one of your co-hosts of Applicable Science.
And back at it again. It's your girl, Amanda Harvey, one of your co-hosts for Applicable Science.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy, Christopher Small. And together we got Applicable Science Podcast. We got our guy, Larry, back in the building with us.
Special guest!
Larry Luster. Larry is a graduating senior, chemical engineering major.
Nanoscience minor.
Oh, I almost forgot that part. You got to put that in there. My fault.
No, it's just sir.
Nanoscience minor from Montgomery.
You ever read a history book? Yes, sir. Montgomery, Alabama, birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement, cradle of the Confederacy, all that good.
Oh,
yeah.
Little droplet.
It's on the state seal, both of them at the same time. It's weird.
Cradle of the Confederacy?
Cradle of the Confederacy.
They own that.
Honestly, you look confused.
I don't want to.
Montgomery, Alabama was the first capital of the Confederacy before it moved to Richmond.
Today's topic, we're going into the realm of one of my least favorite subjects, chemistry, but more specifically, chemical engineering. So, Larry, please do us the honors. Do us the honors. do us the honors of telling us what is material balance.
Absolutely, Chauncey. So I'm actually glad that you made that distinction between chemistry and chemical engineering, because even though the two are similar, there is a very distinct difference, right? So as a chemist, one would be concerned with the actual reaction that's taking place, the mechanism of that reaction, right? What electrons and protons are going where, and how is that impacting what my final product is. As an engineer, I have a knowledge of what is going on, like of the chemistry of the reaction, but my day-to-day life isn't so much as dealing with manipulating the mechanics of the reaction in terms of the electrons and the protons moving by changing the chemistry, but by altering physical parts of the system, right? So if I've got a reactor, I'm changing my flow rate of reactants in, right? So how much of chemical A is coming in however many gallons per hour, and how much of chemical B needs to come in to make sure that I get a certain value of chemical C out, right? So I'm controlling physical components of the system to get a desired output, and building reactors to be able to fulfill these physical requirements. That's kind of your hard and fast introduction to chemical engineering. So chemistry is involved, but it's a completely different focus. I like to say with the pure sciences for engineers, it's a toolbox, right? We learn a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of physics, a little bit of bio, and then we manipulate and control all of those to create something new. And so with creating something new, that's kind of the crux of chemical engineering, right? I have some desired output and something that has to come in order to get that output. And there's some intermediate step, right, where all these things that we talked about earlier, like the chemistry, the biology, the physics, the reaction mechanics, and all of those physical parameters come together to chef up, my final product. And so we describe both this input and output and the in-between as a material balance. So material balance is based on a concept that you learn in your most rudimentary science class. So y'all have heard of the law of conservation of matter, right? Or the law of conservation of energy. Both of these are applicable, right? For those of you that might not be familiar, the law of conservation of matter simply says that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It's just transferred from one form to another. Similarly, with the law of conservation of energy, this law says that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's just transferred from one place to another. So really with engineering or chemistry, anything where you have an input and an output, whatever you put in, like your input, is going to be present in your output, maybe in a slightly different form than you got in, but so long as nothing else is added in between, your input equals your output, right? So one of the things that can start to get funky with this material balance concept, or even with energy balances, which again is just the same concept applied to energy, is that sometimes with your system, you're not always just going to have an input plus an output, right? This entire equation, right? If we break it up into all of the variables, start out with my input and my output. But in its entirety, it says that my input, and I'm pretending I have these little blocks here. Maybe we have the editing budget to add those in. But my minus my consumption plus my generation equals my output plus accumulation, right? So breaking it up in all of those terms, right? I start with something that I'm putting in, right? Let's say this is chemical A and chemical B. Along the way, something in the reaction, like there's a reaction occurred and something new is generated, right? So now I have A, B, and C inside of the reactor. Um, but but also in terms for this reaction to occur, something has to be consumed, right? So let's say I'm consuming a certain amount of chemical B to convert A into whatever my output is, right? Accumulation, let's say that I have some byproduct of the reactor. You could also call this a formation, right? Some unintended byproduct of the reaction. Maybe it's reacting with the walls of my reactor because I chose the wrong material. Now I have a material that's accumulating inside of the reactor. Equals my output, right? So all of that, right? The things that I intended to be inside of the reactor, the things that got added along the way, and the things that had to be burned to create my final product are accounted for in my final product, right? So in short, whether we're talking about matter or whether we're talking about energy, which generally takes the form of heat loss and gain with the reactors, what you put in has to equal what you get out unless you have more things beneath the surface of your reactor.
Thank you for explaining that, because I'm not going to hold you. I thought material balance, I thought that was self explanatory. Material and balance. But thank you for bringing us a new light into what material balances really means, which brings us to our talking point. Whatever you put in is what you get out. Like that one commercial of beef jerky. It's like what you put in is what you get out. Have y'all never seen that commercial?
Nah, I think you had to dig deep into the archives for that one, man.
No. I'll pull it up, but I'm just saying there's a commercial when there's like it's like I forgot what type of food it was, and I don't know why both of y'all have that same pose, but um it's like it's Stephen A has the background noise or background saying, he said, "What you put in, what you
Oh,
get out."
when he's the person inside of the body and he's
Yeah.
eating the jerky and the jerky's coming down. Well, I know what I know what the commercial you're talking
All
about.
right. But right, the talking point is what you put in and what is what you get out. Now, I have a little story to combat that
Oh,
saying.
we got story time.
So, I remember when I was back in high school, right? And I was playing on one of my basketball teams. Now, I'm not going to hold you. Of course, there's times where I could do much better than projected if I was to like practice or do some off course stuff. I was a type person who would just shoot around because I like to I like my jumpers and I like to be like silky wet with it. But I don't like to do like actual conditioning. But then I remember there was a time when
I'm man that dunked on you.
That part right there.
Amanda came and touched the net. Moving on.
Wait till I see
There
you.
was a time when
All for no reason.
my junior year, I got cut from the basketball team, right? Still to this day, it was bogus. I swear it was bogus, but it happened. So instead of me, like going to track, because I did go to track, I decided to try out next year. And I did track that winter, the spring, and I did cross country that fall. Now, cross country was gotta be one of the worst experiences I ever been through in my life. Cause literally all you're doing is running. Hills, down in the woods. Bro, cross country was horrible.
Now hold up. Well, I'm gonna let you finish, and I'm gonna get to you with that cross country take.
But I did improve my wind, and I was a lot faster than I was that year before. And because of that, when I tried out for the basketball team, I made it easily. And I could say that I was a lot better. I was a better person than I was before. So maybe I think everything is done for a purpose. So at the end of the day, I'm glad that guy said that I didn't make that junior basketball team. Although I think I was well deserved of a spot, but grudges die. So
You put the effort in. You did everything that you had to. You fixed whatever that the coach didn't see in you, and you fixed it coming into the next trials the next year. With the cross country, that pretty much showed me how much whatever you put in is what you get out. Because for when I did cross country, my 4 years of high school, all 4 years I did cross country. I'm 6'1". I'm a basketball player. I'm not supposed to be here. But that's neither here nor there. We're practicing every day, as you should. We're practicing in the summer. We're running almost 70 miles a week to train for a 5K race every Saturday, every race. So we're running 13 miles to run 3 miles. To some, that might sound a little crazy, but to a cross-country runner, that's pretty normal. I say all this to say because every summer, every season, I got faster and faster because I put in more miles and I was doing it at a quicker pace throughout the summer. So I remember running the hills of Maryland my last 2 summers of high school. I ran the summer going into my senior year. I ran in Maryland, and I ran after I graduated, and I went back for my internship in Maryland. So I ran the hills, and I see my time get faster and faster because the work I was putting in. And that goes to say, like, to master whatever skill you're trying to do, you got to do like a 10,000 hours or something like that. That's kind of what.
like the Bruce Lee statement. I'm not afraid of someone who do one kick or do different kicks one time or 10,000 kicks one time. I'm afraid of someone who do 10,000 kicks, one kick 10,000 times. That's a quote.
Yeah, I've heard that one before. Yeah, I'm not afraid of the man that practices 10,000 kicks one time, but
Right.
one kick 10,000 times. Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree with it because if you think about all the professional athletes or anybody who's good at things, even though a lot of athletes, they have the athleticism, but they didn't have the talent. Like to be that good and to be that elite, or even collegiate, like you have to practice, or even at school, you have to study, you have to do practice problems, you have to continue to work at it. So I feel like with anything, even though there are people who are naturally better at certain things than others, they still have to put work in to be the best that they can be.
And it's interesting with this stuff, and really with life in general. I'd assert that everyone is an engineer within their own life. And here's why I would say that. Right? If you remember earlier, the delineation that I made between chemists and chemical engineers is that chemists are telling you what product you're going to get. right, from certain reactants, right? If I take A and B and combine it, I should get C. As a chemical engineer, I don't come in with the mindset of, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this reaction that I'm trying to control, right? I know what my input and I know what my desired output are. What I don't know is how much of that output I'm going to get. And so with life, right? Like Chauncey, with your example about wanting to get better at basketball and ended up running cross country, right? You know what your input and your output is. Like your desired output is, I want to build my endurance on the court, right? I want to be able to run longer and faster. The input is, I'm going to have to run longer and faster consistently to be able to get that desired output, right? How much of that you put in, right, and that concentration, and we can even go a step further, right? Your feed isn't always digging deeper, right? Your feed isn't always going to be a pure component A or a pure component B, right? So let's just say, for the sake of it, that Chauncey's two inputs, his two feed streams, to be able to get to running more, or to having more stamina on the court. So stamina is his output. His two input streams are going to be comprised of distance and time, right? And we can even say speed, right? Distance, time, and speed for his workouts. For the distance feed, you're not going to run 5 miles every day, right? Some days you're going to run 5 miles. Some days you're going to do your quick workouts and only run 800 sprints or 400 sprints. Other days you're going to have your core and cardio days, right? And so within that, you're going to have a certain fraction. So if we were looking at this in a chemical engineering standpoint, then I'd say, like, within feed A, I have a certain mass fraction of component 1, of component 2, and component 3, right? So of those distance workouts, a certain number of those workouts are going to be long days. A certain number of those are going to be short days. A certain number of those are going to be workout days, right? Let's say your core days and strength building days, right? Same thing with the speed. You know, you're not going to go race pace every time, right? You're going to have some days that are going to be tempo, some days that are going to be easy, some workouts that are going to be race pace. I did track in high school, for those of you that can't tell. And same thing. So we said distance, speed, and time, right? You're not going to necessarily, hopefully the longer that you do this, right, your times are decreasing. So a certain fraction of your runs, let's say if you're doing a mile run, a certain number of them are going to be, let's say, a 6:30, which is probably your baseline for if you're doing cross country or track. A certain number of those are going to be closer to a 6 flat, and hopefully more of those as you continue to go are sub 6, right, as you get better. Those are the things you know about your input stream and your output stream. What you don't know is kind of the in between, right? Your generation days, right? So one day, instead of having his workout, or in addition to doing his workout for his strength days, Chauncey has to go help his cousin move, right? So now that's more strength that's being added beyond which was initially input, right? It's a generation term. But let's say the next day, Chauncey decides to eat a donut instead of a piece of chicken, right? That's consumption. Now you're moving backwards. And so all of these things, right? So you know your input, you know your output. Those are two things you can measure. The other terms you pick up along the way. And that accumulation term, especially when you're looking at energy balances, is what we're really interested in as engineers, because that accumulation term is telling me how much heat is accumulating in my reactor and needs to be exchanged with the surroundings to maintain my reactor temperature, right? So think about that as Chauncey's muscle soreness, right? I can only work out so many days, right? I need to adjust the flow rate of my feed, right? So the frequency of how often I'm working out, so that I'm not becoming so sore that I can't continue to work out, right? And so if my accumulation term gets too high, now my output is going to start diminishing. So each of the terms is interconnected. but you only start out knowing the input and the output. You have to solve for the rest.
Let me pose a question to y'all. So y'all all mentioned, or at least Amanda mentions about, hard work and talent. Now, there's a quote from Kevin Durant saying, "Hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard." That is good. That is right. But I also think that there are people who has talents, right? And like, for example, they're just naturally gifted, and like the things that you work, let's say you work hours and hours to get things done, they can wake up and do in a flash just because they have the talent. Let me ask you this. Was there a time that y'all ever had to go through something like that? And what made y'all push through that? Because sometimes when someone's working hard sees that, they give up. Because they're saying, "Wow, I spent so many hours on this and they can do it just like this. Why am I doing this?" So do y'all have any experiences like that?
My only one would probably be basketball. My seventh grade year in Jacksonville, you don't have JV. We didn't have JV at the time when I was in middle school. So there was literally one team for every sport, no JV, just straight varsity. My seventh grade year, I get picked to join the basketball team, but I had a terrible tryout. Like I was missing everything. Like come to find out that the assistant coach only picked me because I was tall, but that's neither here nor there. So the summer going in to my eighth grade year, I already knew I was making the team again because I made it last year, and the coach knows me pretty well. I was working so hard because I was playing center pretty much on the team, but the seventh graders that turned eighth graders in my class, two of them had started, and like a third one was coming off the bench frequently during my seventh grade year. So I knew I had to work to at least be a starter. I say that all to say because I still had to work, but even though they had the talent, I still felt more validation for the fact that I had worked because I proved it to myself that I can hold my own against these dudes and be respected by them, be respected by the coach, that I'm not a bum. I just had to put more work into it. So it's not more of a gratification from them. It's more of self-worth for myself. Because what my talent lacked, I put in with work. Because I feel like work is gonna get you more than your talent will over time. Because you can be talented, but if you're not putting in work, what's the point?
No, yeah. I guess way that I dealt with that or had a situation similar was in high school, my sophomore year. So as I've said before, in my high school, I was in a STEM program. So I was with a lot of like the top of the top of within my class. So it was the first time taking AP Physics, and so I'm very bad at physics. I just take it and move on. So when I was in this class, my physics class, sophomore year, literally, I swear everyone besides one other person was acing every test, and I was barely making a C. And I was like, yo, like, why am I not picking it up the way that everyone else is? So then they were like, oh, what'd you get? Oh, I got a 90 this or 90 that. Meanwhile, I'm getting like a 60 something. Like, and struggling. So then I put a lot of pressure on myself because I was like, yeah, like I need to do better. I need to do this. Like, why am I not up to the same standards as them? And why is this not clicking in my mind like how it is theirs? I'm like, is there some type of disconnect? We're doing the same thing. So I found myself like working harder at it and studying, but still not getting the same results like they were getting. And so then I think it came to a point like halfway through it, like maybe because we had marking period. So like maybe like second marking period, which is like right before basically midterms, that I was like, I started doing a little bit better. I think I passed with like a B because we could like do corrections, so we could correct the problems that we messed up. Saving grace. But yeah, so I think I brought it up to a B and I was content. But I still found myself like when I was taking tests, like my anxiety would peak and like I would freeze so hard in the test that I couldn't even take it. But then it came to a point, and honestly, this has carried me to even now and how I think about knowing other people's grades or comparing myself like educationally to other people. There came a point in time where I just stopped caring. I was like, and not just caring about my schoolwork, because I'll forever care about my schoolwork, but I stopped comparing myself to other people and how they're doing or how they're picking up things. And with that, I improved myself in my schoolwork because I wasn't stressing because these people were getting A's. I was just focusing on what I could do and how I could improve. And with that output, I think, so my teacher, she used to give like little stickers. I got one sticker on one half of a test. So I got an A on one thing. And I was like, look at my sticker. But yeah, after that, and after my sophomore year, junior year, I was into new classes, but I could still compare myself, but I was doing tenfold better just because I wasn't putting that pressure on myself. So I wasn't putting in those negativity, like bad things, like to basically losing energy. I was putting good energy into myself and then having a better positive outlook and better grades and a better motivation to learn all at the same time.
Quick, was my teacher the only one who like, so when they pass out papers, right? If you did good, they will like show it out, but if you did bad, they'll turn it over. Did any teacher do that?
They wouldn't necessarily show it, but like they wouldn't make a
Yeah,
point
they would
trying
like
to
try to hide it. They would flip. If you had a bad grade, they'll flip it over. Just hand you like this, like they gave you that look, like
like the see me after class look. Yep. I've
Like
gotten that look multiple times, even in college. Yes.
Like, yeah, you don't want to flip this over right now, homie. Wait till
Yeah, you might
everybody.
want to wait till you go outside to check that. Yeah.
But it's the fact that only works when you're the only one with the bad grade. If everyone bombed the test, then she's like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's
Just make
start
it
from the
rain.
top. Let's start where everybody messed up at.
Nah,
And
but
see,
like,
even with that, like, you gotta learn how to laugh at
like
yourself.
that. There's always like 5 of them, just like, or like 6 of them. They just like they flip it over and then they look at you and then they just keep passing it out. Or they start from the top. So if you had a good grade, like the best grades start from the top, and then the bottom, you'll know who had the bad grade. So people be like looking around, and then once like if she thinks you're coming to you, like yeah. Next thing you know, she passes to the one right next to you. And then you going down the list, and it seems like all the way at the bottom, here comes your paper, and you're like,
It'd be worse.
No way, I did that bad.
It'd be worse if the first paper she was trying to pass it to the person behind you, but she didn't want to walk, so she was like, Chauncey, she's like, here you go, Chauncey, can you pass that to Tyrone? Like, oh my god.
And they looking at you like, damn.
Yeah.
Chauncey, in answer to your originally posed question, I'm always just going to take it and relate it right back to the science, right? So in chemistry, there's 2 types of reactions that you can have in terms of the direction of energy into or out of your system, right? You can have an endothermic reaction or you can have an exothermic reaction. So a reaction that releases energy, being an exothermic reaction, or a reaction that takes in energy, right, being an endothermic reaction. Amanda's like, I sat through chemistry. I've seen this. Yes, I'm bored. But so there's always going to be some energy required, either a gain or a loss. So what does that mean, right? If I have a reaction that's, let's say, heat dependent, and I want to convert, let's say, chemical A to chemical B, and I have a whole bunch of chemical A, and I have a certain amount of chemical B that I want to get, right? I have a whole bunch of chemical A, but no energy that's going into the reaction, right? No heat source, then I'm not going to get any of chemical B, right? But by that same token, let's say I have a little bit of chemical C, but that little bit is just enough to get the amount of chemical B that I want, and I input the right amount of energy, I could theoretically convert all of that chemical C into the desired amount of chemical B. Whereas if I had an excess of chemical A, but no energy coming into or out of the system, I'm not going to get any of chemical B. So from the science perspective, right, that argument holds up very well. That hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. You can have an abundance of talent, but no work, right? No energy going into the system, and you're not going to get your desired output. You're not going to perform well. To the endothermic versus exothermic point, right? I was one of those people where like school was always easy for me. I coasted elementary, middle school, high school. As far as academics went, I put in the bare minimum to get whatever result it was that I needed. So there is an abundance of talent, right? An abundance of chemical A, just a sufficient enough source of energy coming in, quantity of energy coming in, to make sure that I was producing an acceptable amount of chemical B, but not the optimal amount, right? Not the maximum amount. And when I got to college, one of the things that I started to realize is that having the talent wasn't enough, right? And it's one of those things that you knew, right? You hear it all the time growing up, just like the saying we've been tossing around, but you don't really understand it until you experience it. So for me, that was my first year of college, right? Getting cocky the first semester and then getting to the second semester, blowing it in one class and ended up losing my scholarship, right? So one of the things that I've found is that I'm very much so a endothermic person in terms of getting work done and doing work to get the desired results. I need some external source of pressure, whether it's a time crunch or the expectations that people have of me on how I'm going to perform, or that I perceive they have of me of how I should perform. There has to be some external stimulus for me to do more than that minimal amount of work. And so that takes the form for me in a lot of times of me having to fabricate sources of pressure, sources of energy for me to get the work done, right? If I have a timeline for getting a project done and there's deadlines that are set by whoever is giving me the assignment, I have to set my own deadlines and I have to exceed those, those deadlines in order for me to feel motivated to get it done. Or else, if I don't take advantage of that first source, my secondary source of energy is going to be that time crunch the night before, right? And now that's the motivation to get the job done. So absolutely, like just both from the science standpoint, from the technical standpoint, and from the life experience standpoint, I agree with that statement. You have to be willing to put in the work to get the desired output. The talent isn't enough on its own.
So I have a question. So obviously when relating this to life, there's always a chance that no matter how much work you put in, you're not going to get your desired outcome. So what are some ways that you guys deal with when that does happen?
I mean, you just gotta take it. You gotta just take it how it is. It just wasn't in the cards for you for some reason.
At least you can say that you try all your might. That's one thing that at least you have no regrets. Let's just say like that. You did everything you could, and it just didn't work out.
With me, and again, take it back to an engineering perspective. When you don't get what you want out of a process, right? Or even in life, where you don't get the desired result out of life, there's a reason why, right? Something that was supposed to happen or that you thought was supposed to happen didn't happen. So the first step should always be to evaluate it, right? What did I do? What did I expect to happen? Did what happened match up with what I expected to happen? And then what's the deviation from that, right? And then your next step is to look at what you actually have, right? So I didn't get where I wanted to get. I didn't make the product that I wanted to make. But what did I end up making? Right? What is it that I'm sitting there holding in my hands? I didn't make my benchmark, but where am I standing now? And what should be my next step in terms of transforming what I have into what I want to get, right? Or is it even possible, right? That's the evaluation. Is there another process that I can go through to refine this product, right? That's not as pure as what I want it to be able to get the desired purity, or did I just make junk? Do I need to scrap it? Same thing with life, right? Best example that I could give is wanting to, so I'm the president of our NSBE chapter at Hampton, and the people that are in the positions on my e-board right now, many of them aren't in the positions they originally applied for, right? We had some people that ran for positions like vice president and didn't get that position, but went for an appointed position that they had to apply for, didn't get their first choice, ended up getting their second or third choice, right? That's a perfect example, right? And the question isn't more so like what position do I want to get, but what do I want to get out of this organization, and what roles can I fill, that I'm qualified for, to where I can get the same experience, so I can get the experience that I wanted to get initially, or that I can use as ways to transition in the future into the role that I wanted from the start, right? You don't see it as, okay, I didn't get where I wanted to go, so I'm just going to stop. A lot of times with the processes and reactions and things that we might deal with in the sciences and engineering and just in life in general, your initial result is not going to be your desired product, but that doesn't mean your initial result is garbage, or that it should be discarded. It's just an intermediate step before you get to your final product.
I mean,
That was nice.
you pretty much took that when you were saying that. I was listening, and then it took me back to. I think I talked about it earlier, but I'll restate it again. How my sophomore year, I took an internship with this Fortune 500 company in Florida, and it's a defense contractor. It's cool. I got paid for it. I did some good work for them, but at the tail end of the spring semester, I got my dream internship, but I couldn't accept it from NASA at Langley Research Center. But I couldn't accept it because I already accepted and got my paperwork done in with the Fortune 500 company. Needless to say, I mean, I never did get a NASA internship, but I plan on working there one day. And it just takes different paths on how people get to the final outcome, the final result. Your input might be different, but if you the other subsidiary boxes that you said earlier, if it equals to what your output result wants to be, you'll get there eventually. It just takes time, and it won't be just one track. It'll be different lanes that you have to go to get there.
Listen, you should always enjoy the ride. Your journey may not be the same as other people's that you dream of. So if you have idols or you have role models, remember your path is not the same as everybody. Your life is not the same as everybody's. Everything about you is different from your role model or just your peers, even your twin brother, for example. You're different. You need to embrace it. Because when you go through your journey and you actually make it, you can turn around and tell somebody else, saying, look, my journey may not be the same as yours, but I got to the place I wanted to be in. For example, I know this may be a broad example, but look at LeBron. He's a kid from Akron. He didn't have a dad. All he had was a mom. And look where he came out to be. He probably, I don't know if it was just dreams to become an NBA from the jump, but he had ambitions. And because of his journey not being the same as everybody else, he continued to work hard, and now he's making a difference to try to help other people. Like, for example, I think it's I Had Dream School or something like that.
I promise.
I Promise School. And he's helping kids who at Akron to give them a chance that they don't have, that he never had.
Yeah.
And I inspired to, once I get older and have enough money, I inspired to have a school and to reach back to help other people. The thing about this is, I know about America, but I'm trying to help people overseas at Africa because they never had the opportunity. And I'm blessed that I was born in America with the right parents and with the right society, because I could have easily been born in Africa and the hill from here would went from here. So the thing about what I'm trying to say is your journey is different from everybody. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to somebody else because not everything's the same.
And to piggyback off of that, I feel like when you go into the field of research, they tell you you just have to learn how to fail. Because think about how many times they have failed. Like, think about it, what with material balance, what goes in must come out. Think about how many times they didn't get their desired product or they didn't get the results that they wanted to get, and how many times they have to go over and over again. But with the failures, there's lessons. So they look at, and like Larry said earlier, they evaluate what they could do differently, ways that they can improve, and just grow and better what they're doing. So if you think about it in life perspective, say if your relationship with said person didn't work out, there's a reason why it didn't work out, and evaluate it and look at what lessons you've learned from it. You failed the class. There's a reason. see what you can do better, how to improve, and next time you get into it, do better. There's a reason for failure in every point in life. There's a reason why things don't work out. And you just have to learn how to grow from that, take the lessons, and do, I guess, in a sense, try and do better. Because you can't always just do better by saying, oh, I'm going to fix it, but just try your best and push yourself to limits that you might not think of, and just embrace failure in its entirety.
That's one of the things my current research advisor has been trying to break me of since I started working with him. Fail fast, Dr. Dumas always says, and it's constantly reminded me of when I'm trying to set up my experiments or even just decide on what like my next course of action should be. I mean, that's for research, that's for extracurriculars, that's for grad school. Like, figure out what you want to do preliminarily, test it, and if it doesn't work, adjust it. And the reason why he often tells me that is because I'm prone to procrastination. I procrastinate a lot. One of the things I've learned about myself, especially over the past year, and even being like in quarantine right now for COVID-19, is that my procrastination is sourced from a desire for like perfectionism, right? I wait until the last minute, so I don't have a choice but to do it perfect the first time. And if I fail, then the excuse is, oh, I didn't have enough time to do it. But if I had started earlier, then it would have been perfect. I did this as far back as when I was in high school, and it was funny. My English teacher actually defended it one time. So it's very much so I would do this. In my sophomore and senior year, because I had the same English professor, very seldom would I submit a final, like a full rough draft for a paper. what we would do a lot of times for my rough drafts is I would talk or like either schedule a time or just periodically talk with my professor about my paper and my ideas for the paper and what I wanted to put in it. That demonstrated to him, even though there tangibly wasn't a document, tangibly there wasn't a rough draft, that I was still working on it, right? The gears were turning. I was thinking about it. I would write my rough draft many times over in my head, a lot of times where it would seem like I would just sit there and I'm doing nothing, like the wheels are turning, so that when I put pen to paper, the final copy is the final copy, or rather the rough draft, technically, because it's the first draft, is the final copy. Um, and so, yeah, it's something that now that I realize that about myself, the biggest thing, I was talking to one of my friends that's in grad school about this earlier, is like my biggest thing when it comes to tasks, whether it's for research, whether it's for classes, whether it's for extracurriculars, my biggest thing is just to get started on it. Once I get started on it, then I'm gonna keep rolling. It's like again, tying it back to the science, it's like a reaction that has a energy threshold that needs to be surpassed before the reaction can complete, right? Before you can pass a step in the reaction. For those chemistry minded people out there, think about the diagrams that show the different stages. The names escaping me now. I think it's like reaction coordinates or something like that. We can edit that part out where I said the wrong name for it, but yeah. um there's some free energy threshold, right, that has to be exceeded in order for the reaction to complete. And there's going to be some step, right, the slowest step or the step with the highest energy threshold, that's going to be your rate determining step. Like how fast you can complete that reaction is going to depend on how fast you can get over that highest hump, right, on the graph, that highest energy threshold. And once you start, like, you don't stop, right? So you hit a dip in the graph and you got to go back over another energy threshold. And so with me, it's I need to get started on the task and get far enough in it to where that perfectionism starts working to my benefit, and it becomes I can't start on this because like it needs to be perfect. It transforms from I can't start on this because it needs to be perfect to I can't stop working on this because I can't say I'm done with it until it's perfect. Right. Um, and so, yeah, that's one of the things, like, that's I thank Dr. Dumas a lot for that, like that fail fast mentality, right? Like if you're going to fail early so you can do exactly what I was saying earlier, right? Make that self-assessment. What worked, what didn't work, how can I change it? And if there's more intermediate steps you have to go through, you have much more time to do it and much more knowledge of what it's going to take to do it if you get that initial failure out of the way first, and you get that initial failure out of the way early.
And on that note, we would like to thank the audience for coming to another Applicable Science podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions that will help better the channel, please let us know. But until next time, we'll catch you.